G'day guys, I'm Mark Berg and today I'm going to go through 5 of the biggest mistakes I think wreck fishers are making, particularly when they're fishing estuaries. I've been doing this quite a while and I've made these mistakes myself, and I'm hoping that today me sharing them will make your fishing experience a little bit better. Let's start straight off with number 1, a game plan. A lot of us are time poor. We don't have that much time to plan out a full day's fishing or whatever it might be. And sometimes we've just got to go when we can, but you still need a game plan. And let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. The tide, for example, moves at a different pace throughout the 6 hours of the tide. So for example, if the tide's just turned, it's not moving that fast. So you could potentially fish from the bank or your boat in a channel or where there are big open spaces of water. That'll be fine because there's not a lot of run and you can fish it comfortably. However, after about an hour and a half or so of the turn of the tide, the water really starts to move, particularly in the estuaries on the east coast of Australia. It rock and rolls, and you'll see some of those channels, the water is flying. So if you rock up to a spot and you can see that it's flying, the fish are not there. Trust me, they only use these channels to move from one spot to another. So what you want to be doing is looking for a spot that has a break in the water. That might be a pontoon, a jetty, a big snag, something like that that breaks up that cycle of water so the fish can sit in behind it, and they'll always face into the current, in behind that structure, and they're sheltered. They're still on the hunt for food, but anything that comes past them, they can shoot out, snaffle it, and come back in. So you really need to plan out what you're doing. Have a look at the tide chart before you go, and that will help you determine where you're going to fish, what body of water you're going to fish. Also, looking at moon phases, for example. So I don't know if you guys know about this one, but 4 bite times throughout the day. There's 2 minor and 2 major bite times. Now, I'm just going to get into this very, very briefly, but the 2 major bite times, the ones you really want to look for, and it's called the meridian, is when the moon is directly above your head, or if you can imagine, directly below your feet on the other side of the planet. That is a major bite time. And you can find out this information from lots of different websites just looking at moon phases. They call it rise and fall. So if you're going to go for a fish throughout the week, maybe on a Sunday night, you're thinking about the rest of your week, do a bit of planning, have a look and see if you can find those bite times that correspond. So you might say, well, rather than go Tuesday, I might go Friday because that bite time is perfect in the afternoon. The moon's directly above my head. The tide's not flowing that hard, so I can fish that channel. So putting a little bit of effort, a bit of time, a bit of thinking into your fishing will make a big difference. Number 2, do not rely on past results for future endeavors. I don't know how many times you've been to a particular spot and you've had a great session, and that becomes like your spot, your hole, your snag, whatever it might be. Well, this has happened to me. A prime example was at Lake Conjola, and we had a day in the afternoon. We caught probably 20 or 30 flathead. It went absolutely off. It was incredible. It was a great session. And so we were really pumped. So the next day we go back out roughly the same time. We know the tide's gonna be an hour later. Mate, we didn't turn a reel. We didn't see one fish. And we just scratched our heads and did we catch them all? What happened? You just got to remember that things change. They can change very, very quickly. There are so many factors that can shift between one day to the next. So my tip for you is, if you get one of those sessions and it's going off, and I know it's hard to stop fishing and interrupt the action, pick up your phone, go into notes and write down as much information as you can. So that way, the next time you go out fishing, you can have a look at your notes and say, that spot fires on this moon, that wind direction, whatever it might be. Now, you might find it's only 1 or 2 factors out of the 10 that you write down that really make the big difference, but at least you've worked it out. Number 3, a lot of us get caught up in using the same gear time after time after time. We'll go and fish, we use a particular lure, it does really, really well for us. And that's the one. This is the lure I catch all my fish on. This is the best. Yeah, it's because the only lure that you use. Just remember that fish will sometimes respond to different size lures, different coloured lures. On particular days, they might want something that's rattling and is really, really loud. And on other days, they want something quiet. So do not fixate on one particular lure. A prime example would be, just recently we've been fishing for jacks, and a lot of guys have been catching these jacks on these little splash prawns, little surface lure. It's very small. They're not a bad lure. I find they foul up a little bit, but they're a pretty good little lure. Easy to cast, easy to retrieve, just a little splash, splash, splash. And we're getting some inquiries, but for me, I didn't think it was quite aggressive enough. So I've gone, I'll just drag one out, and I've gone on and put on a Realist Fang Pop. It's a much, much bigger lure. It's a lot louder, it's a lot more intrusive, but my strike rate went through the roof. It really turned them on, it really got going. So don't fixate on one particular lure, try different ones. If the fish aren't biting, don't say, oh, eventually I'll get one on this lure. Try something new, try something fresh. And on the flip side, don't be one of the guys that every 5 minutes you change lures. You got to give the fish a chance. You got to move different locations and try different things. And every time you stop fishing and you change your lure, you're wasting precious fishing time. That lure's got to be in the water. The more it's in the water, the more chance you have of catching that fish of a lifetime. Number 4. It's going to sound weird, but we often don't listen to the fish. Now, you've really got to be in tune with what's going on around you. So an example of that would be, you could be fishing from a bank and you'd say you're chasing flatties and you're doing the most monstrous cast. And every strike you get is within 6 feet of the bank, but you still keep casting the china. In that situation, maybe there's a nice drop off right at your feet and that's where the fish are holding. So rather than doing that big cast to china, turn side on and maybe you cast along the length of the bank, because maybe that's where the fish are holding, all the way along the side of the bank. Another example, say you're using a soft plastic. I think this one's about a 4.5 inch, 5 inch lure. Heaps of times I'm chasing flatties, and I keep using them as an example because it's the time of the year, we're catching lots of them, and you get a tail bite. You keep getting a bite. You just keep getting that little bite, but they're not hooking up. You think, oh, come on. Well, what do? Do I just keep casting it or do I listen to the fish? You listen to the fish and you downsize. So where they might be grabbing the tail there, on a smaller lure, which is obviously exactly the same, it's going to give you the exact same action, rather than just grab the tail, they might actually grab the hook as well. So listen to the fish, see what's going on around you. Have a look in the water. You might see bait moving in a different location. You could be fishing here. Oh yeah, look at this bait busting up over there. Yeah, that's really good. Listen to it. If they're there, you got to go there. Actually listen to the fish and what they're currently doing. All right, pay attention. Really, really important. Lucky last, number 5. Now this applies to whether you're land-based or if you're in a boat. It doesn't really matter too much. But one of the biggest mistakes I find that fishers make is they place themselves in one spot and hope the fish come to them. Ba-bow. One of the best things you can do when you go fishing is actually hunt for them. Hunt for the fish, look for the fish. So if you're a land-based fisher, man, you can walk a bank for kilometres and it can make such a big difference to your fishing because they will hold in different spots for various reasons. And no different when you're in a boat. The amount of times I've seen dudes anchored up in the middle of a channel while the tide is ripping. You're wasting your time. You're sitting in one spot. Move around. If you haven't caught a fish for a while, be on the move. Hunt for the fish. So if you're in a boat, you're in a channel, it's pumping, it's not happening, go look for a little back eddy. Or for example, you might see a big snag in the middle of a mouth of a little side creek, something like that. Anchor up in front of that. Have a cast towards the snag. Fish will hold when the current is pumping. Land-based, same thing applies. You're fishing one spot, it's very comfortable. The sand is clean, perfect spot for your seat. The spot a little bit further up is a bit rocky, maybe not as comfortable, but there might be a whole school of bait fish right there and you don't even know about it, and there's a bunch of fish sitting underneath there ready to slam your lure. So be on the move and hunt out the fish. They're my 5 tips for the guys that love fishing the estuaries, and it applies to a lot of other things too, a bit of offshore stuff, even fishing from the rocks. I hope it's helped you. Thank you for watching our channel, and see ya.